Hey there, Safire. So for Essay 3, Eric and I are creating screencast videos for students. Nice job getting a very strong draft turned in nice and early so that you could get some feedback and then take some time to actually go through and revise it and make it even stronger. Already, I think your draft is doing really impressive things. Something I noticed right away was that your comprehension of Mill is really outstanding, as evidenced both in your summaries of Mill's ideas and also in your application of Mill's ideas to Jake's situation. I knew that you were really comprehending these things at a high level when I looked at some of the work you did. I think it was for activity number 11, and you were already hitting the mark way before anybody else really was grasping what Mill was saying. And so you should feel really good that you're working with these ideas in a really confident and sophisticated manner in this essay. So off to a great start. I'm just going to comb through the essay. I'm going to talk about things that are working and maybe give you some suggestions for revision along the way. And then you can reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. So starting with your introduction, I think you dive right in terms of giving Jake the direct advice that he's asking for. You're basically telling him that he needs to join the nursing program if he wants to fully pursue a sense of fulfillment. So clear thesis claim. And then you've also done a little bit of forecasting or mapping here by letting Jake know how you're going to support this claim. You're going to rely on the views of John Stuart Mill, and that these are the arguments you're going to make to lead him to this place called the good life, which is what we think he's after. I do want to say that in paragraph number 2, before I dive into the content, I just want to mention that I think you do a nice job of crediting the sources on multiple levels. So letting your reader know that you're working with a textbook, but that the ideas in the textbook don't belong just to Eric, but that they're actually building off of John Stuart Mill's ideology and his worldview. And so I think that the way that you're continuing to cite this throughout so that Eric has the credit tied to his book, but we're aware that these are Mill's ideas, it's working really well throughout the entire paragraph. One suggestion I'd make, this is such a tiny suggestion, but because you're such a strong writer, I can give you tiny suggestions, is that when you're using MLA, we don't need to have the comma in there. So just Salahub 13 would be totally sufficient. I don't think it's something you'd ever get docked on in a class, but if you're using MLA in the future, just know that the comma is not a requirement. Okay, what else? I think this paragraph works really well to introduce the ideas of low quality and high quality pleasures and to just start to give Jake a taste of especially what low quality pleasures are. I love that you tie it to his current situation and say, Jake, what you're doing right now is a lot of low quality stuff. These examples of sunning, eating food, partaking in the entertainment, these things bring him gratification that is easy, and he doesn't have to work very hard for it. And so in doing this, you really show him a nice example of what low quality pleasures look like in a person's life and how his life is really falling into that trap right now. And then you contrast it very nicely in this third paragraph where you explain the characteristics of fecundity as well as high quality pleasures, and then connecting that to the alternative, which is nursing school, right? So if you go to nursing school, it's not always going to be easy. You're going to get frustrated. There's going to be pain and difficulty along the way. But these are exactly the kinds of struggles that really pay off in the high quality pleasure equation. And so I think you're really hammering that home very nicely to Jake. This paragraph works great. My suggestion at the bottom of the paragraph is I'm going to suggest reconsidering whether you need this part here. So this would make an excellent conclusion for this paragraph. Pursuing the nursing school program contains the two aspects required for it to be of high quality or fecundant. And it is pursuing those types of pleasures that will lead us to a more satisfied and meaningful existence. That's a really powerhouse way to end that paragraph. This idea about our pleasures still being subjective to some extent, and then using that example from Eric, I follow what you're saying, but it feels tacked on to the rest of the paragraph. It definitely doesn't feel like something that Jake would necessarily want to know about, or that he would bring up, or that he would be holding as a rebuttal in his mind. And so my advice to you, Safire, would be just starting, sorry, I'm going a little crazy with the highlighter here. Okay, well, I'm having a little tech difficulty here, so just ignore this this highlighted section. I didn't mean, I guess I was clicking too much and I didn't mean to highlight that. But what I'm trying to point out is this section right here. And let me grab another tool so I can do that. This whole section right here, I would suggest cutting this out. Again, it feels tacked on and not as important as the stuff that comes before it in the paragraph, maybe not as relevant to the argument you're trying to make and the purpose you're trying to serve. And also, I'm going to make some suggestions at the end of the essay that are going to take up a little bit more space, a bit more space actually. So I think cutting this section is going to free you up to develop something that may resonate a little bit more later on. Okay. So moving down to the fourth paragraph, this transitional topic sentence is really quite strong. Now let me present you with some real-world application of these ideologies. And so that's just a nice way to let Jake know we're going to peel apart a little bit from Mill here. We're going to look at some other ideas, but they're all still going to tie together still at the same time. And so you bring up Electrode Man. You do a nice job of summarizing what Electrode Man is all about. And then you give Jake this takeaway that Mill disagrees that his quality of pleasure is good, right? Mill doesn't really see him as living the good life. I did want to push you to tease this out just a little bit more, only because you so fully explored Mill earlier that I don't want the Electrode Man example to feel like more of the same. I want it to maybe add to the paper on another layer. And so the suggestion that I have, and it's a very small one, is just to look at that final sentence of that paragraph and to push it a little further. So if Mill would also assert that Electrode Man isn't really happy in regards to the sense of flourishment or living the good life, I would ask you the question, why not? And maybe develop another sentence there that addresses the why not. One thing that jumped into my head was this idea that he isn't achieving his full potential, right? He could be feeling good all day long, but what is he contributing? What is he doing that will bring him a sense of pride and accomplishment? He's not doing what Abraham Maslow would call self-actualizing, right? He's not reaching his greatest potential, which is actually quite a sad thing because in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if Maslow's right about our physical and social and psychological needs, it's not only important for us to get food and shelter, and all those basic needs met, we have an innate psychological need to address our own greater purpose in life, whatever that is. And so if Electrode Man never gets the opportunity to even address his greater purpose in life, then it's almost like he only gets to be like half a person, right? He doesn't really get to experience the fullness of being a human being. And so just teasing that out a little bit more, I think would work really well. And you may remember back to the assignment sheet that it's asking for Mill and or Socrates and two other examples or sources. I'm really only seeing the one source, the Electrode Man, and I know this is confusing because some students will interpret Eric himself as being a source since you're pulling this stuff out of his text. But I would encourage you, because you're already so far along in this essay, to include one more source. I think Eric would probably be a little disappointed if you left it after Electrode Man. I think he'd want to see one more source from the text developed. You can certainly pull in any source that you think is relevant, any other example, but the one that felt really ripe to me was what we were just talking about, which was the Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. And I think if you were to pull in that and talk about that after Electrode Man, you could have some kind of great transition, like to further understand the importance of reaching one's fullest potential, we can turn to Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. And then you could use this section to talk with Jake about how nursing school is the more likely vehicle to help him move up Maslow's pyramid. Remember, the pyramid has things like physical needs at the bottom, but then it has things like relationships and, in a sense of support, and then it has things like self-esteem. And how is it that Jake's self-esteem and his community and his connections may be served better by nursing school than they are currently in his resort job? And how might that whole track or that whole path of being in nursing school and going into nursing boost him up to the very top of that pyramid that Abraham Maslow talks about. That would be my challenge to you, because you've already done such a great job of showing us that you understand Mill inside and out. And so now, with about 5 days before this essay is due, that's the challenge I would leave you with. Pulling in one more significant source that could just drive your argument home a little bit more for Jake. I think you're on the right path. You're like 80% of the way there, and I would just push you to go a little bit further with maybe one more source. I think Maslow would be a great fit, but if there's another one that comes to mind for you, go for it. So those are my suggestions. Again, really awesome work so far, Safire. This was super fun to read, and I really look forward to reading your final. Please reach out to me and or Eric if you have any questions.